listeners, are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
Welcome to Choosing Love for Authentic Power, a podcast from the Choose Love movement, where we talk about how to respond to life's hardest moments with courage, compassion, and real strength. Today, I'm honored to welcome Kelli Sallee, a powerful and compassionate speaker who spent more than a decade working with Drive Sober of Greater Lafayette, helping prevent impaired driving through education and honest conversation with students across multiple states. Kelli's work is deeply personal. She shares the story of her best friend, Tiffany TK Kramus, who was tragically killed by a drunk driver, an experience that changed Kelli's life and became the reason she chose to turn pain into purpose. Through storytelling, poetry, photos, and heartfelt dialogue, Kelli doesn't speak to shock. She speaks to connection. Her message is unforgettable. Don't make short decisions that will have long-term consequences. Your choices matter. That message aligns so powerfully with what we teach in the Choose Love movement, that there is always a choice moment, a space between what happens and what we will do next, where we can choose courage, responsibility, and love. Kelli is living proof that one person's voice, one brave conversation, and one loving intervention can change outcomes and even save lives. Welcome, Kelli.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to start from the beginning? I mean, I resonated you when we met at a conference in New Hampshire. You resonated with me, a person that found purpose in tragedy, on a mission, using what we've learned to help other people. And I'd really just like to start there.
Yeah, when we met, I was kind of at a tipping point of is this something I'm going to keep doing? Is this something that I push, or is it something that is just a thing that I do, which I think is two different things, right? And during your presentation, you said it several times, finding purpose in pain. And I literally still have the piece of paper that I wrote that on numerous times. And it just kept resonating with me. And then honestly, it took me back to 25 years ago, when kind of this whole presentation, this whole "what are you doing" got started. I don't know if you want to go into how it kind of happened, but I would
like to go into your personal story. I would like to go into how you are healing through using what you've learned from a very real tragedy to help other people. And it's sort of interesting. I mean, you say pain into purpose. And I feel like when you are living your purpose, you can do nothing but. And it doesn't mean you don't question yourself. It doesn't mean I don't question myself. Those questions always come in. It's just our brain's way, I think, of keeping us grounded, maybe keeping us safe, checking in with ourselves. Is what I'm doing really making a difference? Is it worth, all the effort? I do that as well. And so I think that's just par for the course.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think it's I've always said I just need one. I just need one adult, one kid, one person, whether it's during, after, to just look at me and kind of say, I get it. Or come up after me after the presentation. And listen, having kids come up to you after a presentation with tears in their eyes, saying how sorry they are, is just, it's a whole nother example of this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And having that validation that what you're doing is important and it is resonating. I know I feel the same way speaking in front of kids and having them come up, and in adults, I mean, people of all ages. And it's almost like if I am questioning myself, and the very question that I've asked of myself, someone will come up and they will give me the answer. They will validate what I'm doing. They will say exactly what I was questioning to let me know you are on the right path. You are doing what you're supposed to be doing. What you're doing matters. It's important. It's making a difference. And yes, and that definitely comes from people who respond.
Yes, absolutely. So to get kind of into the story, if you would like, to explain Tiffany Kramus, I always like to say, and when I talk to the kids about this, that's actually quite funny to see how they respond to it. I am definitely an emotional person. I like to talk about feelings. I like to hug. I'm a big hugger. I love hugs. And Tiffany is a bear. And when I say bear, I say she's that friend that I love you, but keep your distance. Like, don't like when you would hug, it's like, it's kind of like a tap. And I'm like, no, I want to hug you and let you know that I love you and I care for you. So hearing students' reactions and point like, oh, that's totally her, and is always quite interesting. But I met Tiffany my freshman year of high school. She was a sophomore, so she was a year ahead of me. And we met playing basketball. Sports in the Midwest are a little different 25 years ago than what they are now. You pretty much played, as a female, you played one of three sports, which was volleyball, basketball, or softball. And she played softball and basketball, and I played basketball only in high school. And, we just kind of formed this friendship where our high school at the time combined three different middle schools. So I really didn't know her until I was in high school. And we just became really good friends. And I think our friendship was that whole yin and yang. And again, as a kid, 14, 15 years old, I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what that was. But that's who we were. We were each other's support systems. We had kind of the same family life going on. She was a stud athlete. Softball was her big driving force. And she really excelled at that. And as we went through high school and got through high school, we kind of had a few little bumps in our personal lives that we just kind of supported eeach other through.
So you mean like family issues? You said family dynamics.
Yeah, family dynamics, things happen at home that, you don't necessarily always see outside. But it was good to have someone say, God, I just need the yelling to stop, or I just need someone to support me. Mm-hmm. And we were that. We were each other's support system. She was always at my house, always hanging out. I have an older sister who's the same age as she was, same grade as she was. So she was just one of us. Like, she would come and go from our house, eat, leave her car. Like, that's just how we were. We went to basketball tournaments over the weekend. She just slept at our house. That's just how it was. My mom knew what her foods were, knew what we should have in the fridge. So, going through school, we were just together. That's just how it was. And that's how our friendship formed. And so she graduated in 2000. And I think it's important to note that April 3rd of 2000, our high school, put on a program called the Every 15 Minutes program. And in short, the Every 15 Minutes program basically does a mock drunk driving crash at your school.
Okay.
And what they do, it's very intense. It's very, like, as a kid, I was just a participant. I didn't necessarily know what I know now of all the ins and outs that go into it. But in short, basically what happens is there's 25 to 30 kids, junior, seniors, that are chosen from each class. And you go through 4 to 6 weeks every Sunday meeting and basically just talking about why you were picked, what's going to happen. We each kind of had a mentor given to us, and you were not allowed to tell anybody that this was going to happen, that you were a participant, for the shock value, right? So only us 25, 30 kids knew on April 3rd what was happening. So April 3rd comes around.
Now, do they don't do a crash in front of you. They bring a crash from a drunk driving accident so that you see it at your school.
Yep. So they brought in a vehicle that was involved in a crash.
Okay.
They kind of set it. Our high school is actually set up really great for this. Is they set it up in the back parking lot, crashed car.
I think I've seen that before, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, this is all happening during school. They're all bringing it out, and then during the day leading up to the mock drunk driving crash, you are pulled out of class. There's 25, 30 participants are pulled out of class by a Grim Reaper. So the Grim Reaper comes around.
Is this a person dressed as a Grim Reaper?
Yes. Yeah. So
Wow.
They came around, they stood in the classroom, they said your name, you got up, you went and stood kind of in front of the classroom by the door, and they read your obituary that your parents had written.
Wait, so your parents actually wrote their child's obituary and it was read to the class?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I didn't necessarily know that or remember that was happening. And at the same time that was happening, a police officer wherever you lived was going and notifying your parents that at this time your daughter my mom was told that I was being pulled out of class.
But they had already written your obituary, so they knew this all was happening, but they didn't tell you.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. So I get pulled out of class. We had a smaller gymnasium in our school that was the mock morgue. And you basically got your death tag. And I still have my death tag to this day. And I think it's important to note that I still have my death tag that I was given.
God.
April 3rd.
Is that maybe you could take a picture of that and we could include it. So is that like a toe tag? Is that what they put on your toe when you're dead in the morgue?
Yep. What you see on TV is exactly what it is. It is a death tag that has your name. This identifies that I was killed by a drunk driver on April 3rd of 2000 at 11:15 a.m.
Oh my God. Okay.
Now, here's the crazy thing, Scarlett. April 3rd of 2000 was my 17th birthday. And so at lunch that day, Tiffany and I were supposed to have had brought me in some snack, like a cupcake and my present, right? So I saw her in the morning. She said, "Can't wait to have lunch with you. Happy birthday. I got your present. I'll give it to you at lunch." I get pulled out at 11:15 a.m. right before lunch. And so I go into the mock morgue.
So can I ask, is it like one person per class? Because statistically, that's the number of people that are going to die from your entire class? Or like, why did they choose you? And why do they only have that amount of people going out to view the wreck? I'm just curious.
Well, so they chose me. I wouldn't say that I was the most popular in school, but I had a lot of friends.
Okay.
And I was an athlete. I was in yearbook. I was in the newspaper. I knowing now what I know about the Every 15 Minutes program, it's more of you're picking those kids that are going to have an effect. You're picking those kids who maybe aren't the most popular, maybe aren't the, number one athlete or the star athlete, but you're picking those ones that are like, it's going to affect someone.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Does it still go on? Does it still go on today?
It does.
Okay.
I was actually at a school 2 years ago that put on the same incident, same program, and then I went and presented afterwards. So that happens. I get my tag, I go down to the morgue, and basically you're just getting ready now. They had 10 people who were actually in the mock drunk driving crash. You had like a driver, you had students who were killed in the crash, so they were laid down with the sheet put over them. So we're all getting set up outside, and the entire junior and senior class, and at the time we're talking 500, 600 kids between the two classes, they then come outside to then see this happening. And myself, I was what they called a spirit. So I was killed, and I was walking around with white paint and all of that. And we were the spirits that were walking around the car. But I remember locking eyes with TK when I saw her come out. And she had this look on her face that almost was like, how dare you? And I remember being like, it's okay. It's okay. So meanwhile, police,
how dare you? What was that? What was that about?
Kind of like, how dare you not tell me?
Yourself. You didn't know, right? She thought you knew?
Well, I knew like 4 weeks leading into it that it was going to happen.
Okay.
We met as a group.
Okay.
But we were kind of like sworn to secrecy. Like, don't tell anyone this is happening. If that makes sense. So we were just this tight little,
of course it does. It does.
And I just kind of got this look from her, and I just remember being like, it's okay. It's okay. And so, but meanwhile, all this is happening. You have police, you have fire, you have ambulance coming, you have parents coming, identifying their kids with the police. And it's this whole, and it's all happening very quickly, very quickly. So all of that happens. It's all being recorded. You have a kid go to jail. You have parents go to a funeral home. You have kids go to the hospital. And again, it's all being recorded, because then the next day you kind of wrap up the presentation in the morning where they play the video of what happened to the drunk driver, what happened to the kid that was driving, going to court, going to jail, things like that. They show the parents going to the funeral home. But they needed a speaker. They wanted one of us to speak. And I, for whatever reason, was one of the only ones who could not cut my tag off. They took the 25, 30 of us, and took us to a hotel for the night. And so we got to almost like debrief. We had counselors there. We had, teachers there. We all were assigned a mentor. I was assigned a state trooper. She was my mentor, who kind of was like, walked us through everything. But the next day they needed a speaker and to tell about what happened and how, like, our point of view. So when I got up, I spoke about not cutting my tag off because of how much it had affected me. And, I grew up with parents who had drank, and I remember driving myself home because, Dad was ripping a 6-pack in the car, and that's just what you did. But I didn't know these things could happen. I didn't quite have the forethought for that. So the next day, we go do this presentation, I speak, and we kind of wrap up the school part of it. And my best friend Tiffany walks over to me, and she hands me a piece of paper and says, "Here's how I feel. I love you, and I don't want to talk about it," which was totally typically her. I mean, that was just her. Like, "I love you. I don't want to talk about it."
Right. No hug.
Yeah, no hug. Just here's your. Oh, she also gave me my present and my cupcake.
What a birthday.
And I was like,
woo!
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I would like to read this poem because I think this poem is very important.
Please.
And I think it wraps up, Tiffany was a bear through and through, but if there was one thing Tiffany Kramis could do, she could write poetry. And she could put pen to paper her feelings that just sucked you in, and you're like, oh, so that's how you feel. I walked outside the doors, but couldn't yet see the scene. I wondered what was happening, for I could only hear the screams. Suddenly, my heart just sank as I saw the wreck before me. My friends just lied all mangled in this scene, all dark and gory. This couldn't be my friends. This isn't really real. But then I heard the sirens and I saw the bloody wheel. Tears fell from my eyes, for now it must be real. The paramedics came, but you just lied there, still. Everyone was trapped and scared as I heard their bloody cries. They tried their best to rescue them, but there's no use in telling lies. 2 were taken away as the others lied under sheets. My body now just froze as I heard my classmates weep. Soon the families of the victims came and kissed their kids goodbye. I couldn't help but wonder as I heard their mothers cry. Why did the driver drink and drive? We will never really know. But because of his careless actions, my heart has lost its glow. My heart has been left to ache as I've watched my friends all die. So next time you decide to drink, who is going to drive? And 10 months, 10 days later, Tiffany Kramis was killed by a drunk driver.
That is profound. It really is. And 10 days after a drunk driver took her life, and who
10 months and 10 days.
Oh,
10 months, 10
and
days.
10 days. 10 months and 10 days. So within a year, a drunk driver would take your best friend's life. And who did drink and choose to drive? Who was the driver?
So the driver that killed her was Michael White. And Michael White is, at the time, was the father to my 2-year-old niece. And how this happened is they were friends. I mean, we all grew up together. I grew up with Mike. Mike was a neighborhood boy that my sister fell in love with. We played basketball together. We grew up together. He would take me to practices. My sister and Mike had a kid together in 1999. And soon after they broke up, maybe like mid-2000, but we all hung out. Like, they lived together. Tiffany and I would go over to my sister and Mike's house. We were all friends. And she died February 13th, which was a Tuesday. I knew Monday that she was going to hang out with him. Did I know this or expect this? No.
I mean, did Michael have a drinking problem?
So interesting enough, just to kind of walk you through what happened that night, they left a party in Illinois, and Illinois, again, was 10 minutes across the line. It wasn't that far. Kind of how it happened is they purposely took back roads to try and avoid cops. And it just so happens the back road they took the Indiana State Police were doing like a check that night, just on that road randomly on a Monday night, just to try and catch distracted driving, drunk driving. And they called it a saturation patrol, is what they were doing. And Mike was driving down the road. And this is something we really talk about in the high school classes is I try and talk to them as a driver. It's late at night. It's after midnight. You're driving. You see another car coming at you. Your brights are on. What are you supposed to do? Turn your brights off.
Yes.
So we talk about those things. And when they were driving past, the car that just happened to be coming past Mike and Tiffany in the car was a state trooper. And he did not dim his brights. And when the state trooper passed him, he saw that Mike had kind of crossed over the line. So in return, as I know cop language now, working in law enforcement, he flipped on him, turned on his lights and sirens. And, the unfortunate part is Mike went on a 17-mile chase of speeds up to 120 miles an hour. And to answer your question, Scarlett, it was because he had already had two previous two OWIs, one about 6-7 months prior to this. He had been drinking.
What is OWI? I've always heard of DWI.
The same thing, operating while intoxicated.
Okay.
Versus driving under the influence.
Okay.
So they were up in speeds of 120 miles an hour. Another thing we talk about in the classrooms is, speeds and distracted driving. And the whole time Mike is clipping a mailbox here and there, going through a neighborhood here, drove into a yard. He had a very fast car. He had a Z71 Camaro, 5-speed. It was loaded. I've ridden in it. I know how fast it could go. And his words, Tiffany was yelling at him to stop.
I bet she was. I was just thinking that because that's what I would have been doing.
Yeah. And again, knowing what I know now in law enforcement, they had already ran his plate. They knew who he was. They could tell by the path he was taking, he was really just trying to get home. And so what happened? They came on a road, cornfields in Indiana, and back in 2000 in February, it's dark. It's extremely cold. And they came upon a road, and again, his words, he had decided to stop because Tiffany just kept yelling at him, screaming at him. I don't know if you know anything about a manual. He tried to drop it down into fourth gear. And again, being intoxicated, being amped up, the distracted driving, he's trying to figure out this 3 pedals versus 2 pedals, and his car fishtailed. And when it fishtailed, it shot off into a cornfield. And when it went into the cornfield, according to him, he was ejected on the first flip, and the car continued to flip end over end numerous times, with Tiffany still in the car. And he was able to get up and walk to the car before the cops kind of even found them because they were just so far ahead of them. And Tiffany died of blunt force trauma and died inside the car that night.
I am so sorry. That is such a dramatic story. And wow, it really takes my words away.
And I always point out, when we, in the schools, when we talk to the kids, drunk driving is one thing, distracted driving is another thing. All of those things were happening all at once. He knew that he was driving on a suspended license. He had had 2 previous OWIs. Neither one of them were wearing a seatbelt. He had drugs and alcohol in his system. But at 23, he was a kid. He was a kid who knew he had kind of gotten away with it 2 times before. Is it really that bad of a thing to drive a 3rd time?
Yeah.
That was kind of his mindset.
And certainly never the intention of getting into a wreck and killing somebody, of course, because you never think that that's going to happen to you. That happens to other people, but never to you.
Right. Right.
Strength that we can rise above. I choose love.
Hey there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
Wow, that is an incredibly motivating story, I guess, for you to now honor your friend and teach what you've learned. And I almost think that you going in and sharing your story, just personally, and answering questions and sharing what you've learned might be more powerful than the every 15 minutes, staging a wreck and that shock value, the fear. I'm not exactly sure, and I haven't looked at the statistics at how effective that is, but from our war on drugs, when I grew up, it was the billboards had a metal frying pan, an iron frying pan, I think, with, over easy eggs. And it was, this is your brain on drugs. And of course, that was not effective at all. Sort of shock value. I'm not sure how effective that would be, but I know that somebody going in and sharing their story, and that story is going to have everyone's attention. And that is, oh my God. I mean, I don't want to say amazing, but life-changing to hear that, Kelli. And so what are the things that you share with kids that are takeaways that you've learned? I know that it's very difficult to, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to put that on there, but I mean, to try to get kids to make good choices without fully developed prefrontal cortexes, and they're risk takers and they never think anything is going to happen to them. And even, anti-smoking campaigns. There's finally the Truth campaign that came out that basically gives them the facts of what smoking does to them, just facts. It's not trying to scare them. It's not trying to shock them. It's just giving them the facts and how they're being manipulated through advertising and things like that, and basically putting it on them, saying, you make the decision. That's been, from my understanding, the only effective sort of promotional measure to get kids to stop vaping and smoking. And so how do you use your story and what you've learned to share that with kids in a way that would change their decision-making going forward and help them to make better choices?
It's a couple of things, right? And my particular presentation happens several different ways depending on what the school. here locally.
But before you go into that, like how did you start, and when did you start thinking like, I need to share this story and I need to, because not everybody is motivated to go out and travel and speak in front of groups and be vulnerable enough to share their story and what they've learned and, try to be part of the solution like that. There are other ways to be part of the solution, but not everybody chooses that route. And I'm just curious about what the thought process was that brought you to that.
Well, to go back to our earlier conversation on finding purpose in pain,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So all of this happened. There's a lot more to the story that involves my family, Tiffany's family, so much of what happened that week. We were in basketball sectionals at the time. So as a kid, there were so many other things that like I had to do. If I wanted to play in the game, I had to do these things. Coincidentally, we were playing Tiffany's cousin's team the day that we buried her. 6 hours later, I had to play a basketball game. And I have pictures from the game. I couldn't tell you anything about that day. I can tell you what happened from her service to the minute I walked away from her casket at 1:15 p.m. Couldn't tell you anything at tip-off that happened from 7 to 8:30.
You're in shock.
We won.
You're in shock.
Right.
I know that shock.
Yeah. We and it was amplified, right? Her cousin's team was a county rival team, was a big team. They were ranked at the time. We had no business beating them. Plus, on top, Tiffany was an athlete. She was a star is probably a stretch, but she was very well known. And knowing that her cousin, who was was a starter on the team, so I literally hugged her cousin at 1:15 when I walked away, and then I had to go face her on a basketball floor because that's what we did. It's what you do, right? So there was a lot of shock. I didn't participate in anything really. I didn't even play in the game. And afterwards, her parents were there. Her parents were super supportive. And, so you take about a year after that, there was a lot of contention with my family. And, that contention was my mom trying to be supportive of me losing my best friend, but also being a mother to my sister whose child's dad is now responsible for killing my best friend. And child's dad, he was family to us.
Of course.
So there was a lot of we just didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about our feelings. My sister didn't attend the funeral.
Oh. Wow.
So there was
Did
a
he
lot
go
of
to jail? Did Michael go to jail?
Yeah, so he was sentenced to 20 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was sentenced to 20. Here's the thing though, Scarlett. Sentenced to 20. 25 years ago, the state of Indiana had quite the act of how do you get those numbers down? How as a prisoner do I get those numbers down? So sentenced to 20, and he served 8. And he served 8. And I say that, and I can say that confidently, because every day off, you're there for good behavior, you get a day off. Every day you're working, you get a day off. Every day you get an education in there, you get a day off. Every day you get a higher education, you get a day off. Mm-hmm. He did all of those things. Mm-hmm. And so he served exactly 6.5 in prison. And then he served 1.5 years on what is called community corrections, mm-hmm. which is like work release, house arrest, those kind of things. Again, just to keep adding to the story, right? When he was when he got out of prison and went to work release, I was working at work release. And it was the only time in 25 years that I have been in the same room with him since my niece's 2nd birthday, right? And I I pretty much had a full-on panic attack because he came a day early. He wasn't supposed to be there that day. And he got all set up and got through his stuff. And he walked over to me and said, "If you ever want to talk, we can talk." And he walked away from me. So again, I'm in my 20s now at this point. And how did I get on this journey? Well, I got on this journey when I went to a candlelight visual back in 2003. And it was just a candlelight visual if you've lost a loved one. We're in Greater Lafayette downtown. And I met a guy named Dan Towery. And Dan Towery was the president of Drive Sober when we launched it 11 years ago. Who had lost his daughter and her boyfriend to a drunk driving crash, also in Lafayette. He just kind of like walked up to me. I was holding my candle, and he just kind of walked up, and said, "Thank you for coming." And on my candle, I had like TK written on it. And he asked me who TK was. And I said, "My best friend." And I kind of told him a little bit of the story. And he knew a little bit of it because he was fighting legislation and stuff at the time. And he said, "Kelli, you're angry." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm angry. Of course I'm angry." And he just looked at me and said, "Well, what are you going to do with that anger?" And at 20, I was like, "I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? I mean, I'm angry. That's what that means. I'm angry with all these aspects that have come into it." So I remember walking away from him, and a few months later, I am very fortunate. When I was in high school, I had 4 or 5 teachers and an amazing high school guidance counselor who got me through all of this. And I try and tell them every time I go back home how important they are to me. But I had a teacher who gave me a card the week Tiffany was killed. And again, at 17 and in pain, you're like, "Thanks for the card. I don't really know what it means." But at 21, 22, when I reread that card, it talked about the most important thing you can do is honor her. And I was like, what? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
I want her to be here. That's what I want.
Right.
I didn't know what that meant.
How am I supposed to do that?
Yeah. So I met Dan. He told me I was angry. Go back to this. And we just connected. A couple months later, I ran into him randomly, and he said, "Hey, how do you feel about telling your story at a victim impact panel?" And I was like, "Well, what is that? And why do you want me?" And, I had all this. And he, victim impact panels are still going on in Greater Lafayette today. And they are impact panels where if you are given an OWI, operating while intoxicated, whether that's drugs, alcohol, pills, you are sentenced to a victim impact panel. And you have to listen to 2 to 4 speakers on how they were impacted by drunk driving, OWI driving, anything like that. So I started doing that at like 22, 21. And I remember sitting in those rooms still very angry, especially at those people. Yeah. And I was like, you're literally making these choices, and I'm sitting up here affected by it. And then I had a teacher who came and listened to me speak. And she said, "There's so much to this, Kel. There's so much more you could be doing." Mm-hmm. And I was like, it's a lot to get up here and talk to these people. I couldn't imagine going in front of kids. And then she helped me with an opportunity to go back to my high school, where Tiffany and I were friends, where we met, and stand in front of them and tell them the story of Tiffany and I. And it was probably, I've done a lot of therapy. I think therapy is great. Mm-hmm. But being in that moment and at that time kind of coming full circle was exactly where I was supposed to be.
That's really beautiful. And I totally agree. And I really do think that with all of the efforts that we do focusing on the problem, I think it's much more effective to tell a story that impacts the heart. So open hearts to open minds, and then to teach kids what they can do instead when a situation like that happens, and it will happen. I'm wondering, when you say, you talk about how choices matter, what does that look like in real life when peer pressure hits fast and emotions take over? You are a middle or high schooler and you're in that situation. You are at a party, you're getting into a car, you're not exactly sure how much your friend or even a friend's parent has had to drink, or yourself, and you're thinking, oh, I'm just driving home. It's not that far. I know the route. And you allow other people to get in your car. I mean, how do you help kids navigate that? Because how you help kids is also how you help bigger kids. Because, a lot of times I'm out there and I'm speaking about certain things, about making choices, about choosing a thoughtful response that's kind rather than reacting in anger. And it always hits me when I'm talking to any age group of kid that I could be speaking to adults. It doesn't matter. We still find ourselves in this situation when we're adults. There's a lot of adults listening out there now that are thinking, I've been in this situation over Christmas at our Christmas party, or, at a dinner party. So how do you make good choices in that situation? And what does that even look like?
Well, I think it's important, and I've learned this in talking with kids, that it's somehow, how am I going to relate to them? How can I relate to things that are happening every day in their lives right now and put this into a perspective for them? One of the big things that I do here in Goffstown is I follow the SRO during this presentation. So the SRO does his law side of it. We talk about what BAC means. We talk about
what does BAC mean?
Blood alcohol content.
Okay.
And so he talks about the law side of it.
Okay.
And then I go in and try and put all those facts, law side of it, into real life situations.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest thing in talking with kids is giving them a safe space to talk and a safe space to ask questions that maybe they don't necessarily want to ask. And it's something that I talk about from the very beginning of the presentation. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, you're going to see some things. I show them pictures of the car. I show them the grave. I show them the cross. I show them mugshots. I show them all of that. But this is also a safe space for us to talk, and you can ask those hard questions. Those moments of, I had a friend do this. This is what I did, but what could I have done better? Mm-hmm. Right? And we talk about that all throughout the presentation. And I really think if there's anything that I've learned from kids, especially high schoolers and things like that, it's just making sure that they feel comfortable to ask the question. And while that's not always easy sometimes, I think when you can put real life and real pain and real sadness in front of them, one of the first questions I start with when I talk in classes is, who here has a best friend, good friend? Anybody? Anybody? Like confidant? The majority of them raise their hand.
I hope so.
Right. And then I say, who here has gotten to see, talk, and then I try and think of all the social medias that are out there, text, Snapchat, FaceTime, whatever, that person today. And how did that make you feel? And then I go into, well, my person got taken away from me because of a choice that she didn't, listen, and the person that did this presentation 20 years ago, the Kelli that did this 20 years ago, is not the same Kelli that does this presentation now. And I tell them that. 20 years ago, I was angry, I was mad, I did it out of hurt.
Yeah.
Today, I do it because I want each one of those kids to know that short-term decisions can have long-term consequences. And let's sit and resonate with that. She chose to get in the car. You know, we didn't have cell phones like we have cell phones now. We didn't have Uber, didn't have Lyft. We also don't have those open conversations with adults today, like we do today, like we did 20 years ago. You know, and I think it's important. And I want to point out, you know, you talked, I listened to one of your podcasts, Lorraine Connell talked about being a teacher and sometimes she had a chance to almost be like an advisor to a kid, to her students in that. And I am very thankful, you know, 25 years ago, I had teachers who I knew I could go to and who I went to. That's not today's day and age with teachers and students. I know it's
So
totally
that's what you're seeing. You're seeing in school that less and less, especially 25 years ago when you were in school, that you're finding when you're talking to kids that they really don't have that relationship with their teachers. And why do you think that is, Kelli? I'm just curious.
Well, you know, I've actually asked the teachers that are still teaching, you know, 25 years later.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing is life is just different. Social media is different. News is different.
Yeah.
You know, I think of my high school basketball coach, who I can't tell you how many times my parents didn't pick me up. They didn't. But my high school basketball coach took me home.
Yeah.
And, you know, in talking with her 20 years later, she doesn't do that now. And she will sit and wait, but she will not put a kid in her car.
Liability wise,
liability.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liability and all of that. And, you know, the
So
thing
liability gets in the way of relationship a little bit. I mean, I do too.
Oh, 100%.
It's
100%.
interesting to hear you say that. Yeah.
100%. So when you bring, like myself, an outsider into a room of, you know, I've talked to 400 kids at a time. I've talked to 15 kids at a time, and just say, I'm not a podium speaker. I don't like standing behind a podium. I like being on their level. I want to talk to them and walk amongst them.
I'm the same way.
And, you know, just asking them everyday questions. And it's always those ones who you don't necessarily always make eye contact with during the presentation, but it just takes one simple question of, what would you do in this? What would you do if you were me? And then they raise their hand and you're like, oh God, I thought you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
But tell me, talk to me, tell me what you think. But I think it's important that kids today are, it seems to me, at least amongst themselves, are having those hard conversations. Mm-hmm. They may not necessarily be with adults like I was doing 20 years ago. And I think it's important that I always say to them, you should have one safe person. You should have one safe person in your life that you can reach out to and there's no questions asked. I mean, I'm the aunt to 17 nieces and nephews. I've been that person. And I think it's important that we help them build those relationships and encourage those relationships. You know, and I think I let them know Tiffany she had been drinking, she had drugs in her system, all at the same time, that all of this was happening.
And so that also impacted her ability to make a good choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And in her mind, she needed to get home because she was starting a new job the next day.
Right.
So that's it. I just need to get home.
So maybe advanced planning when you're going out for kids and adults, advanced planning on if you're going to be drinking, how are you going to get home?
Yeah. And that's something we talk about. I go back home to Indiana a lot during prom time, when prom season is coming up. And I encourage kids to have fun. I love to have fun. I love to dance and be silly and all of that, even at 40 something. But what's my plan? Am I calling mom? Am I calling dad? Am I getting an Uber?
Yeah.
Do we have that one friend who we know is going to be safe? And we try and have, how does that discussion look? Tell me what that discussion looks like to you. Interesting enough, sometimes the guys will raise their hand, the boys, and say, I just get in my truck and go. Okay, you're sober though, right? You're sober, you know what you're doing. Yep. So it's just, I want to plant a little seed in their head to, if you're in that moment and something is happening, what are you doing? Think about it while you're getting ready. Think about it before you go out. Think about it before you actually have to be in that situation. And we get that heightened of fear and that heightened of like, God, what do I do? How do I do it? All that. I already know what I want to do. I'm going to call or I'm going to text.
Right.
And these are some things that we can do.
Yeah. I know when I was in high school, there was something that was going around, having parents not question if your child calls late and asks for a ride, even because it's impaired. And where I grew up, there was a lot of underage drinking. And so feeling confident that you could call your parents and get a ride home without punishment. But of course, there would have to be some sort of follow-up conversation, depending on what shape you were in when you were picked up. I just pulled up some statistics, Kelli, and it says that there is a long-term decline in underage drinking and impaired driving over the recent decades. But it does say also that motor vehicle crashes remain the leading cause of death for teens, and alcohol is a major contributor. It says in 2023, which is, I guess, the latest they have statistics, ChatGPT anyway, 30% of drivers ages 15 to 20 involved in fatal crashes had been drinking before the crash, indicating that impaired driving continues to be a serious threat for young drivers. National data also shows that nearly 1 in 4 high school students reported riding with a driver who had been drinking in the past month. I'm going to say that again. 1 in 4 high school students reported riding with a driver who had been drinking in the past month, and about 1 in 6 reported driving after drinking at least once in the past year. So this is a really pertinent conversation. And so what is the most effective thing that you say to kids, Kelli, that you think might motivate them to make better choices?
I think probably for me, the biggest thing that I have said that has seemed to us, resonate a little bit with them, only because kids have come up to me afterwards and talked to me about it, is back to don't make a short-term decision that has a long-term consequence.
Yeah.
And when I say that in my presentation, comes across the PowerPoint, obviously, and there are all these pictures of Tiffany smiling, of my best friend smiling.
Yes.
And it's talking about the ripple effect. We're all there with friends, family, communities. One quick decision affects so many people, so many over time. And, I think for me, when I say it, I read it, we sit in it for a good 30 seconds, and then I read it again. And then I ask the question, when you hear me say this, what does that mean to you? And then, when you get the responses of, should I be riding with a friend who had a drink? Because that's a short-term decision. What if they get into an accident? That's a long-term consequence, So I think for us, the high schooler, the kid, the sooner we can get to them, and again, just plant those little seeds of am I going to hesitate to get in the car, or am I going to get in the car? I just need that hesitation. I need that hesitation to think, what else could I be doing? And that's what I tell them. I get it. Sometimes, Tiffany was in a situation where she was across state lines. Who was she going to call at midnight? She had graduated. She was trying to get a new job. Like, there were no Uber. There was no taxi. There was no Lyft back then. Her relationship with her parents was a little strained. So there wasn't that plan ahead. There wasn't that. She knew about Mike. She knew he had been in trouble before. We all knew. But I just need you to think one step ahead. And I just need you to think, do I get in the car or do I not? Do I make the phone call? Do I send the text? Just think it. That's what I need you to do. And I've had teachers tell me, I've had principals tell me that they have seen students write that down. And to me, that's really what makes it. I have a website that they can go to, and I'll send that to you. It talks about, the presentations that I do. I'm a life coach also for young adults and grief, loss, and things like that. And again, I think it's really just kind of shaped me because of TK. And I can absolutely get that out to them. I just think it's important that, we put in front of kids a true story, a true story, a story to make them think. And that's really all I'm trying to do, is just get them to think maybe just a little differently when a moment comes up.
You know what? Every kid that listens to you and that story. And that's why I think story is so important, because it's a true story and it's coming from your heart and you lived it. And it's so gripping over and above even like the shock value of seeing a car wreck and reading obituaries and stuff. Like, that's not real, but your story is, and your heartfelt message and the choices that you make afterwards, it lets kids know and helps them cultivate the courage that they can do that too. They can do the hard thing in the moment. They can make those good choices. So I just want to thank you so much, Kelli, for joining us. I appreciate you so much. And thank you, audience. I know that you probably are thinking of someone that could benefit from hearing Kelli's story, hearing this podcast. Please share this. That's how the Choose Love movement spreads its message of love, is literally by sharing, by word of mouth. So forward this to somebody that you know will benefit from it, and we will see you next time. As always, thank you for choosing love.
Hey, hey, oh. It's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up if you